everybody, we're going to get started. Thank you so much for joining our ambassador briefing today, our first after our 2019 Advocacy Summit. We're really glad to have you with us here today and to talk about all the ways that we can follow up after the Advocacy Summit with our legislators to continue those strong relationships that we started to build. Whether you were in the event in person or if you were participating virtually, there are so many ways that we can continue this momentum together. On the call today, we have three of our staff people. My name is Julie Eller. I'm the manager of Grassroots Advocacy, and I'm so glad to be a part of this program with all of you to help make sure that we're sharing our stories and that patient voices are heard by our decision makers. Stephanie, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Stephanie Livingston. I'm the Consumer Health Specialist with the Advocacy and Access team, so I'm excited to talk to everyone today.
And Ben. Ben, you may have to unmute your line. Well, to continue to facilitate the call. Oh, there you are. We can hear you now.
Thank you. Awesome. This is at the foundation.
Ben, I'm sorry. Can you reintroduce yourself? You cut out right in the middle.
Oh my goodness, sorry about that. Yeah, I am Ben Chindoke. I am the Senior Director of State Legislative Affairs at the Arthritis Foundation.
Perfect, thank you so much. We're so excited to have our whole state director team with us as well. And Ben, do you want to introduce the state folks?
Yeah, absolutely. So hopefully many of you are familiar with the state directors in your region, and if not, we've listed them out here on this slide. So if you are located in the blue, western, pretty much everything in the Mountain and Pacific time zone, Stephen Schultz is your state director. If you're interested in local opportunities for advocacy and engagement, please reach out to Stephen. His email is listed on this slide, as are all the rest of the state directors. You can see Michelle covers the Illinois, Missouri, Kansas. Pam is most of the rest of the Midwest. Kristen covers all of the Southeast, all the way out to New Mexico. And Mary Bartlett has most of the Northeast. If you do live in the upper New England area, up where I am, based just north of Boston, you can also reach out to myself. And my email is listed right there on the screen.
Thanks, Ben. So for today's call, we've got three different sections of updates that we're going to give you. First, some institutional ambassador updates, and then some policy updates on the state and on the federal side, and then we'll move into our ambassador activities for May and for April. So we are so excited to provide all of this information for you guys today, and we'll kick it off with our ambassador updates. Passing the mic over to Stephanie.
Okay, so we have two other ambassador briefings scheduled for the remainder of the ambassador year. Those are listed here, June 26th and August 21st. They're both Wednesdays, and they'll be at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, similar to this one. By this time tomorrow, all of this information will be listed on the current ambassador assignment page, so you can check that out for some more information. We'll be putting together some great content for this. We're excited. We also wanted to give a plug for all of our amazing tools and resources that you can find in the Advocate Tools and Resources portion of the Advocacy webpage. These include some of our state arthritis fact sheets. We have a really exciting new patient insights document that the foundation has put together that will be to circulate shortly. There are great advocacy toolkits and different one-pages that you can distribute to your members of Congress and things like that. So be sure to check it out. Back to you, Julie.
Thank you. And you can expect to see some of these documents right in your inbox in our next edition of our Advocacy in Action newsletter, as well as our ambassador newsletters. So to just give you a brief reminder, we wanted to outline what our ambassador requirements are for the year as if you're hoping to become a 2019 Platinum Ambassador. You'll be required to do 10 regular ambassador activities along with 4 bonus activities and fundraise a minimum of $1,000 for the Arthritis Foundation over the course of the ambassador year, which runs from the beginning of October 2018, to the end of September of this year. We have a couple of tools and resources available that can help you track your activities, make sure that you're participating through the year, and some of those are available on our current ambassador page, our current ambassador webpage. We've got a Platinum Ambassador requirements and bonus activity checklist that will allow you to record whenever you complete one of your ambassador assignments, right on one sheet of paper in your home so that you can see it whenever you need, and a checklist that will allow you to look at any of the bonus activities that you've accomplished. Now, this paper copy will have to be made digital and available to our team so that we can help you track your progress. And the easy way to do that is right through our bonus activity or ambassador reporting center. One point of clarity that I want to make sure that we mention today is that whenever you report a bonus activity or take action in our Action Center, you'll receive a confirmation email from our system right into your inbox. And at the bottom of that email is a link that will take you to a report of all of the ways that you've engaged with us from your time engaging with our Action Center. So it's an easy way to go back and check to make sure that you've reported all of your activities so that we can make sure you're on track for that Platinum Ambassador award later in the year. We want to thank everybody who attended our 2019 Advocacy Summit. We had a really, really amazing time with just about 300 advocates and ambassadors who joined us from all over the country at our nation's capital just earlier this month. We were thrilled that we were able to meet with just over 215 offices on Capitol Hill to share our stories and advance our arthritis priorities with our legislators. In addition to our in-person activities, we want to thank everybody who participated virtually in our social media campaign. We were just over the moon to see that we had over 10 million impressions on social media of people who were reading our Advocate for Arthritis tweets, seeing our amazing photos of advocates and ambassadors across the country sharing why they advocate for arthritis, and really helping to advance our legislative goals and our raising awareness for arthritis just broadly. As we move forward from the Advocacy Summit, we want to build on the momentum of our legislative asks that we made there through the year. So what you can expect to see coming down the pike are more assignments that will help make sure you are checking off the box to follow up with our legislators and make sure that they understand everything about our legislative asks and understand the urgency behind supporting them. On our policy updates for the federal side, Vincent, our federal director, is flying over to California right now to help speak at an event, and so I am going to make sure that we provide our federal updates from my end. At the Advocacy Summit, we had 3 core legislative asks. The first was to ensure patient-centered reforms to step therapy requirements, and that's an ask that we've talked about a great deal on these calls, and that we'll continue to talk about a great deal throughout the rest of the year. We have not just yet had our federal step therapy reform legislation introduced to this Congress yet, but we will be certainly advocating for it every step of the way. We'll talk more about that ask a little bit later. Our second ask was to strengthen the Congressional Arthritis Caucus. We wanted to grow our caucus from the 129 members that we had at the beginning of the year to as many as we possibly could by the end of this Congress. So we have seen some growth since the summit, and we want to continue that momentum through our action alert on our Action Center. And our final legislative ask was to secure appropriations, robust appropriations for arthritis research and programs at the Department of Defense and at the CDC Arthritis Program. Now, if you were at the summit, you may have asked your member of Congress to sign on to an appropriations dear colleague letter about the Department of Defense or the CDC, and the deadline for them to sign on to those letters is today. So if you would like to, you can send them or give them a call to make sure that they are signing on to those letters. But if they haven't had an opportunity to sign on, that doesn't prevent them from sending a letter to their subcommittees on those appropriations answers so that we can make sure that everybody has access to those those legislative asks through the year. One star story that we wanted to mention was about our Strengthening the Congressional Arthritis Caucus ask. One of our Advocacy Summit participants, Abby Kasperwitz, the chair of the North Dakota Advocacy Committee, attended our Advocacy Summit this year. And before she came over to the event, she wanted to make sure that her members of Congress would hear about the Congressional Arthritis Caucus from people other than just her. So one of the really amazing things that she thought to do was to reach out to her state director, Pam Fields, and work together with her to send a letter to her members of Congress in North Dakota to let them know about the Arthritis Caucus and to encourage them to join the Arthritis Caucus. In the past, when she got to meet with them, they always said, you know, we hear from you, but we haven't heard from anybody else in your state. Abby, can you just show us that this is important to more people in your community? And so this year she delivered on that. And just yesterday, we finalized Senator Kramer, his membership to the Congressional Arthritis Caucus. And it was all because of the actions that Abby took. So she came to the summit, she encouraged people in her state to take action, she got a handful of people to send letters with her, and now Senator Kramer is a part of our caucus, and we're so excited to include Senator Kramer in the 116th Congress's Congressional Arthritis Caucus. So congratulations to Abby. And with that, we want to encourage you to send those letters to your members of Congress to encourage them to join the caucus through bit.ly/Arthritis Caucus 2019. Now we want to shift gears and talk a little bit more about what's ahead for our federal agenda as it comes to our legislative policy. We're looking to reintroduce our step therapy legislation that was introduced in the 115th Congress. That bill was called the Restoring the Patient's Voice Act, H.R. 2077. If you're on this call, it's likely that you advocated for or engaged on this issue in the last Congress. It was introduced by Representative Brad Wenstrup and Representative Raul Ruiz, who are both practitioners who went over to Congress to share their stories and their experiences as providers and are now members of Congress. And it had a really amazing amount of bipartisan support in the House. We had 88 co-sponsors in the House, and it was not introduced yet to the Senate in the 115th Congress. So now that we have a newly elected Congress, what we have to do next is to reintroduce that legislation and pretty much start from scratch. So our ambassador assignments this year are really going to be tailored once we get that reintroduction to making sure that all 88 of those co-sponsors from the last Congress sign up as sponsors again this year. Now, the federal step therapy reform legislation does three key things. First, it calls for a clear and transparent process when seeking an exception or an override to the step therapy review by a health insurance plan. It also establishes a clear and reasonable time frame for override decisions. And finally, it requires insurers to consider the patient's medical history and the provider's expertise in partnership with their own patient. So it really helps to restore that patient-provider relationship that can be interrupted by a step therapy requirement. Now, this legislation will really help us to advance our asks. So how are we going to make sure that our co-sponsors from the last Congress co-sponsor again this Congress? Well, we're going to have a continuing ambassador assignment that will help to support this. So later in the call, we'll talk about our Welcome to Congress assignment and how we can use that assignment to really position step therapy as our step therapy reform, as our primary legislative ask on the federal side so that we can continue that relationship. And we'll give our members of Congress a heads up and say, hey, we're going to be following up with you on this issue because we really want to make sure that your name is included on the sponsorship list. Some things that you'll want to do now are look at our sponsorship list from our last bill to see if your member of Congress was a sponsor in the 115th Congress. If they were, your ask is going to be to have them to re-sponsor once reintroduced this year. If you have a freshman member or someone who is newly elected to Congress, we'll want to do and lay the groundwork for them so that we can teach them all about this issue and why it's so important to us. Finally, we'll need to secure sponsorships from those that did not sponsor during the last Congress, and that'll include the folks in the House who did not yet sponsor and the folks in the Senate who did not have an opportunity yet to sponsor. And we'll segment our ambassador assignments based on these 3 cohorts of individuals so that we can make sure that we're sending precision advocacy messages to the folks who will receive them on Capitol Hill. More on that later. Also, once the bill is introduced to our Congress, we'll show you how to track the bill in our Action Center so that you can keep an eye on your members of Congress to see whether or not they have sponsored the legislation just yet, and you can make sure to continue to follow up with them or thank them when they eventually, if they eventually do sponsor. So this federal legislation will expand our protections for step therapy reform nationwide. And we're going to transition now. I wanted to show you our map of step therapy reforms in the states because we're working on this federal issue on the state side as well. I'm going to pass it over to Ben to give you more information.
Thanks, Julie. And that's absolutely right. The federal bill is based on the state model bill that's passed in about 21 states now. And as you can see from the map, we're pursuing this legislation in about 11 more states this year. If you live in one of those states that are in that lime green, I encourage you to contact your state director and help push those lime green states to a darker green. Thanks. You can move to the next slide now. We generally, the Arthritis Advocacy Program is centered around reducing barriers to your access to care. And we've highlighted 3 policy areas right here that we focused on in 2019 in addition to some of the longstanding priorities that we've had. In particular, we want to highlight step therapy reform, which Julie did a great job of giving an overarching view on the federal level. And the state bill mirrors, the federal bill mirrors most of the state bill in that it also provides exceptions for providers to override burdensome step therapy protocols. It speeds up those time frames and makes sure that those protocols are not just based on cost, that they're actually based on clinical criteria. As you can see from that map on the previous slide, we've had a lot of success with this bill on the state side of things, and we're pursuing it in many more states. There's a list there on this slide as well, and we've had some success already in 2019. Both Ohio and Virginia in 2019 had their governors sign this bill into law. We're getting close to the finish line in several of these other states already, including Georgia. So I encourage you also to reach out to your state director or take further action, which we'll get into in a moment. We also have pursued legislation, model legislation based on reducing your out-of-pocket cost. Primarily, the Arthritis Foundation pursues a model legislation that requires insurers to offer a certain number of their plans without a deductible and a copay only, so to reduce those very high coinsurance barriers and cost to prescription medications. The 4 states where we've pursued this bill so far in 2019 are listed there. And if you live in one of those states, again, I encourage you to contact your state director. And for mid-year formulary changes, another one that the Arthritis Foundation pursues. Obviously, we're not for mid-year formulary changes, and we're pursuing legislation that prohibits those insurance plans from making those changes in the middle of a contract year. As you can imagine, that's fundamentally unfair for one party to unilaterally change the terms of a contract and leave that patient who may have done a lot of research in choosing a plan that was most appropriate, had the lowest cost for their care, and now is stuck without a major life event from enrolling in a more appropriate plan. The states are listed there. If you live in one of those, again, contact your state director. And at the Arthritis Foundation, we offer a number of ways to engage electronically as well. So highlighted here is a story bank, as well as our Action Alert Center. Julie, whose address is listed there on the slide, can take action for the District of Columbia in sending a message to her city council member if it's an out-of-pocket cost bill, which DC previously had, or another one of these pieces of legislation. All of that is available on our Digital Action Center on our website. And if you have experienced step therapy or a mid-year formulary change, I also encourage you to check out our story bank on the Arthritis Foundation website and tell us your story. If you're wondering whether or not you have experienced step therapy, which is an insurance protocol that requires a patient to try and fail a medication before getting to a prescribed medication. We have some guiding questions on our story bank to help you figure that out and whether or not your story matches the legislation or the issue. So if you are experiencing barriers to care but you're not quite sure what bucket they fall in, I still encourage you to check out that story bank, and there's certainly opportunities available for you digitally. And Julie, if you go to the next slide, there are also plenty of opportunities to engage in person. So we've highlighted some of our advocates' great work so far in 2019 here. And I know that Kristen's on the call as well. Hopefully she can give a shout out to her advocates in Georgia who have done a wonderful job. I mentioned that Georgia is getting close to the finish line on step therapy reform.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Ben. So just a really quick shout out to our advocates here in Georgia. They have done an outstanding job over probably the past 3 years, but specifically for this year with sending action alerts out to their state legislators and attending 2 separate lobby days here in Atlanta at the Capitol. We had them at the rope lines and speaking to their legislators about the importance of passing the step therapy reform bill, and it has passed through both chambers, and hopefully by next week, prior to the end of the legislative session here in Georgia, we will have the bill going over to the governor. So wonderful job to all of our Georgia advocates, and looking forward to doing some of this same work in some of my other states.
Thanks, Kristen. And we also highlighted Heidi Barrett there, who testified in Washington and has on a number of bills in Washington state, but specifically this time on a bill that addresses the step therapy protocols that I mentioned on the previous slide, as well as prior authorization requests, forms that doctors often have to fill out before they can prescribe the medication that they believe works best for your treatment. Stephen, are you on? Do you want to give a shout out to Heidi and a little bit about what she's done in Washington state?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Perfect. Yeah. Shout out to Heidi and the advocates in Washington who have done a great job on this utilization management bill. It's actually going to be receive a vote in the Senate Health Committee today, and it's already passed the House. And so after that, we'd be heading to the full Senate, and that's due to the work of the Washington advocates who have gone to lobby day, who've been sending in action alerts, who have, like Heidi, come and testified, or she's also, as you can see below, her and her son share their story in a local newspaper, and so a tremendous job of getting this bill so far in the process. Very exciting.
Thanks, Stephen. And I hope everyone can take away that the advocacy efforts that were involved here, the advocates that went to the legislative day and did some of these in person as well as electronic advocacy opportunities that I mentioned on the previous slide, have resulted in those bills moving forward, and they're close to becoming law now, and they are close to becoming law because of those efforts, and we couldn't have done it without them. And we also appreciate if you sometimes just the nature of the state legislative process, you may have short notice, we know, for being testified in hearings and legislative days. And if you find it easier to engage digitally, that option is always available to you in the Action Center. Michelle, I don't know if you want to highlight 2 of our advocates that just testified this morning as well on short notice.
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, beautiful. Yes, so it was very fast-moving in Missouri in that we had an out-of-pocket bill recently was introduced, and in fact, we had just heard yesterday that there was going to be a hearing in the Senate, and that would have been this morning. So I connected with Janet and her daughter Kylie, and they happened to be available, provided them just with, we talked it over about some of the talking points, and they knocked it out of the park. I heard from several of our folks who were there in the hearing room, so just it is fast-moving, and we do appreciate it, when you're able to, kind of get to the Capitol kind of in that short notice. We also had a couple advocates who weren't able to join the effort in person, but they've already have sent emails to some of the legislators that they know on that committee. So there is those opportunities as well.
Thanks, Michelle. And again, if we know short notice is very difficult, especially those of you with very demanding work schedules or school schedules as well, and there are plenty of opportunities to get involved throughout the legislative year in person with your legislator, as well as, again, the digital opportunities we provide online. Julie, do you want to go on to the next slide? And I mentioned state legislative days. These are days that we get together sometimes with coalition partners, but also at the Arthritis Foundation, and getting together to push for a specific piece of legislation like step therapy, which we've mentioned, or mid-year formula changes and so on. You have opportunities coming up in those states of Ohio, Delaware, New York, and California on bills like that coming up very soon in the next 2 months. And again, thank you to all of the advocates that attended the 8 legislative days we've had so far this year. Stay tuned.
Thanks so much, Ben, and thanks to all of our state directors who gave little shout-outs before. We want to make sure that you hear everybody's voices from our team, because we really are all in it together trying to advance these different legislative priorities around the country. So now let's talk about what you can do in our April and May activities to make sure your voices are heard by your decision makers. We've got 3 key things that we want to talk about. The first is that we want to continue the momentum on the federal step therapy reform legislation. The next is that we want to use our Welcome to Congress packet as an opportunity to teach our members of Congress about arthritis priorities. And the third is that we have a number of opportunities that you can use to incorporate advocacy into your Walk to Cure Arthritis efforts that you're embarking on across the country. So first, let's talk about the step therapy reform plan. Well, our commitment to you is that over the next number of months, we're going to be putting together our action opportunities, that can help to make sure that your voices are heard throughout the process. And we're getting in on the ground level. We're making sure that right now our legislators are hearing our voices, share our stories before the legislation is introduced. Our advocates on Capitol Hill went in person. We had our virtual summit attendees share their stories as well. And the moment that the bill is introduced, we want to have a rapid response plan. So we have put together a guide that you can use that segments our members of Congress into those 3 cohorts we mentioned before. And once that bill is introduced and assigned a bill number, we're going to send it to you that day so that you can start to take action and encourage our members of Congress to sign on as sponsors for this legislation. It'll be paired with a training video that will teach you how to track legislation through our Action Center so that you can continue to see live updates on whether or not your member of Congress has sponsored the legislation yet, so you can remember to follow up with them throughout the process. So we're going to have a number of opportunities here on step therapy reform, and we hope that you embrace them to the fullest. And remember that polite persistence persuades people. So what's next? Our Welcome to Congress assignment. And this is available for you right now on our website, and we'll be following up with all of you with a recording of these slides and all of our assignments very shortly after this call before the end of the week. So what we're hoping to do, we used our Welcome to Congress packets as our leave behind materials for our Advocacy Summit. And it includes information about all of our different priorities. And what we've done is prepared a guide for you to use these packets in an email to your member of Congress's staff to introduce them to arthritis issues. And what we've done is positioned the draft email so that we can pull step therapy reform out of the packet and encourage them to really take a look at this piece of legislation so that when it is introduced that they can be a part of the solution to these step therapy barriers. So we're hopeful that you'll take a look at our messages that we've put together, take a look at our guides, which are available right now on our current ambassador assignment page, and modify them based on the co-sponsorship status from last Congress, and of course, whether or not your state has already passed step therapy reform. All of that information is included in the action guide, so you can just take a look there. You'll be able to see who sponsored it last Congress, and you'll be able to see our step therapy reform map, so take a look. After you've sent your own message, you can encourage your friends to amplify the action by taking action in our Action Center. We've put together a Welcome to Congress action alert that folks can use right now to share their stories and make sure that these packets are being seen by all of our members of Congress. Now we can look forward into May and think about our Walk to Cure Arthritis assignments. So as you know, the Walk to Cure Arthritis is our flagship event here at the Arthritis Foundation that gives us an opportunity to raise funds for a cure to arthritis. So as we're asking Congress to appropriate funds for research for arthritis and programs, we're also going to do our part as well in helping to fundraise either virtually or in person at your Walk to Cure Arthritis. And we have 3 key assignments that are available for you to use as ambassador assignments for the walk. The first is to start a walk team and make sure that every member of your walk team is signed up as an advocate. And there are 2 ways that you can do this. The first is the traditional sign up, so just having them populate their first name, last name, email, and address on our website and sending it off to our team. And the other is to encourage them to take action in our Action Center. The moment someone takes action and sends a message off to Congress, they'll be enrolled in our program and be aware of a lot of the other advocacy and action opportunities that we have through the year. The second opportunity that you might have is to volunteer at your advocacy booth. All Walk to Cure Arthritis events from around the country will feature an advocacy booth this year. And we have a number of things that you can use at this event that are pre-packaged and ready to go for you. The first is a petition, a written petition that you can use to collect signatures to encourage Congress to sign on and sponsor our step therapy reform ask. The next is a one-pager that allows you to demonstrate how to use the Action Center, specifically how to use the Action Center to advance that step therapy reform ask. And in both of those, we'll be using those forms and those petitions to recruit the walkers at the event to join the advocacy program. And you can get really creative and fun with it. We have lots of folks who have done different wheel activities or been creative with their walk advocacy booth activities. So let us know that you want to participate by filling out our interest survey, also available online, and we'll connect you with local staff and make sure that you have all of the resources you need to staff these booths. And our final Walk to Cure Arthritis assignment, which you should all be familiar with if you've been in the program before, is to invite your legislator to join your event. You can either invite your members of Congress or your state legislators to join your Walk to Cure Arthritis event, come to the event, speak about some of our priorities, and share their stories with the walkers at the event to talk about how they are being advocates for arthritis. So they can come, share some talking points that we've prepared about the importance of advocacy and arthritis, and encourage your different walkers to get engaged with our program. So these are our 3 assignments. All of them have a guide or an overview document resource that's available on our current ambassador assignment page that we encourage you to check out. One final thing I want to mention as it comes to these assignments is that each of them has a reporting center link that's available for you to record when you've taken action. For the Walk to Cure Arthritis assignments, I'm hopeful that you'll wait until after you've completed these assignments, after your walk is done, to report that you've done them. If you do have interest in them though, please use that interest link that we've put together so that you can sign up and take action with us. And with that, we're going to close out our ambassador call, and we want to make sure that if you have any questions that we can take them now. So please type them into the chat feature, and we'll address them as we move along. If not, we're going to have our new ambassador orientation very soon to give you all the opportunity to train with us and hear more about what we do next. All right, we do have one question in here. We saw a question about the Platinum Ambassador requirements. We know we have 10 regular assignments that you have to participate in and 4 bonus assignments along with those fundraising goals. And one of the questions that came in was, what if we've already passed the deadline for some of those assignments? Can people still complete them? What do we do? What do we say to them? Well, yes, you can still complete the assignments. For some of them, if the legislative opportunity is passed, obviously we can't give you the same assignment, but we can come up with a commensurate one that will be equal to what we had done before, so it can be done in a similar way. So let's say you're interested in a social media campaign or volunteering at a local event or something like that. We'll help you make sure that you have an opportunity to do something that can replace that activity, and we can either count it as a bonus activity or as an advocacy regular ambassador assignment. Are there any other questions? We're not seeing any others in our chat feature. Yes. So one of the questions is, if I'm hoping to become a Platinum Ambassador or get really engaged in the program, can I review these goals individually with a member of your team? The answer is absolutely yes. You can reach out either to me or directly to your state director to set up a time to talk about the goals that you want to set for yourself and the ways that you want to engage in our program and our ambassador program through the year. And we'll be happy to help prepare some guidance for you and check in with you to make sure that you're on track. Any other questions? Fabulous. So what we're going to do now is close out our regular ambassador call and shift gears into our new ambassador orientation. So if you're new to the program and haven't seen the orientation yet, please stick on the line. And if not, you can scoot to your next